This is us. We are constantly told that we are a divided country with right and left pitted against each other in a winner-take-all contest. How did we get here? Perhaps more importantly, what can we do about it? We'll take a look at both of these questions in this video. As a starting point, can we agree that under it all, we would like to have a cohesive and healthy society? We certainly need to cool off, step back, and rediscover what it means to work together toward common goals. This is not just a job for government. It will take all of us. Let's look at some causes. Then we have some suggestions that all of us can take to improve matters. We say a lot about individual freedom. Let's recognize that complete individual freedom only exists when there is only one person. We are not alone. We are not islands. As soon as another person is added, we have ourselves a little society. Give and take are required for it to work. A society is a kind of team made up of people performing different roles that should largely be mutually beneficial. Economies are built off of these relationships. As Americans, we value our individual freedoms, but we also value teamwork and playing well with others. As society grows, there are more and more people going about their daily lives. It does not take long before the society realizes it needs someone to look out for the whole. And so we choose one or more people to represent and take care of our interests. While they do the work on our behalf, we concentrate on our own business. We allow them to stay in those roles as long as they do a good job. Part of our responsibility as citizens is to stay informed. This is one of the ways we know whether our elected representatives are doing a good job or not. Right now, we have a problem with so much information and misinformation that it is difficult to know what to trust or believe. What information reaches us and how it reaches us is important to be aware of. It is more and more clear that we, the consumers, need to critically evaluate the quality and balance of the information we take in. We learn about what's going on in the world from other people, pure and simple. On a personal level, in our communities, one person might see or hear something and relay that news to another. This goes from one person to another throughout the community. If we look at a single individual, they will have a circle of friends, co-workers, or family, or just people in the community around them. These are people in their direct sphere of influence. We know that each of us has this circle around us. News from one person is transmitted to one or more people in their circle of influence. The information can be helpful, which is a good thing. The bad version of this we call gossip, and that is a very bad thing. It is quite likely that people within our circle are there because there is a level of trust. When we trust the source, there is less need to verify or verify to the same extent. We probably all have people in our circle of friends that are goofballs. For these people, we discount what they say. We say that we should take what they say with a grain of salt. That source is not fully trustworthy. Trust in our information is essential glue for a healthy, cohesive society. We have this progression. We get some information. We verify it is correct. The source becomes reliable and trust builds. Now we perceive the source to deliver truth. Then we can believe something is true and add it to positions we take. We do this type of processing with just about everything, though this video is geared for political discussion. Trustworthy information is absolutely essential. We are starting to hear a little recognition of this from professional journalists, but not as much as we should. Now that we've covered these fundamental ideas, let's build this to today's situation and see what we can do to improve. Knowing that we are not alone, our society consists of many interlocking circles in a vast network of connections and relationships. When we are disconnected, something could happen far away from our direct personal circle, and we would never know. We might be disconnected because of lack of communication channel, not paying attention, or we simply unplugged for a time. In the old days, it could take time for news to reach us. Through most of the 20th century, the nation relied on information coming from the big news sources of newspaper, radio, and TV. TV had few channels with 3 large national networks. ABC, NBC, and CBS. There are some attributes of this older media system that are important to appreciate. There were few choices. The broadcasts went to everyone. Communication was one way. Professionals put out the content. Consequently, it did not much matter which news source you tuned into. You would get roughly the same information from all sources. Trust tended to be there because of this continuity. There still were errors and bias, but the extremes and extent of misinformation was not present. Then, if we follow the money, we learn even more about what drives us apart. The networks made their money through advertising. They were paid by companies who wanted viewers to buy their products or services. When the companies believed that the sales of their product or services improved by using advertising, they were willing to pay more money to the networks. Business systems like this tend to be villainized by some critics, but let's realize that the companies and networks are made up of people, most of whom are simply trying to earn a living. Because communication was only one way, the networks had no way of knowing who was watching their programming and seeing the advertising. To find out, surveys were conducted by companies such as the Nielsen Company. Ratings were produced as a metric of viewer interest. Then something happened. The internet came onto the scene. The old system was, and is still, churning away. But we saw a shift. New publishers of media started showing up, and that meant new competition for the traditional networks. At first, they were caught off guard, but it did not take long for them to figure out how to use the new technology along with the rest of us. This new communications technology provided bi-directional flow of information. For the first time, it was practical to communicate quickly, cheaply, directly, and asynchronously between an individual and a corporate entity. Now everything is connected to everything else. So many choices popped up that consumers were deluged. We consumers started being more actively selective. Providers started to provide filtering. We could use these tools to have only the media we were interested in reach us. While this was an act of preservation for our sanity, it also set the stage for ideological isolation. At the same time, we started to see our behaviors being tracked. Inferences as to our interests were being made. This was the beginning of what we now call big data. Now another dynamic started to appear. Media providers needed to differentiate themselves from their competition to retain audiences. News content was tailored to demographic groups, and greater differences in messaging set up feedback loops that encouraged both the media providers and their audiences to stay together. Disparaging the other side was now in the best interest of audience retention. What's more, bad news sells. This became a reinforcing loop. Media providers could retain their audience by feeding them what they wanted to hear. But that's not all. At the same time, suddenly, every individual could communicate quickly to all other individuals. Virtually overnight, we all became content creators and publishers. It is a free-for-all of podcasts and streaming video. As far as news goes, now we have the added challenge of sifting through what individuals put out as news and commentary. The quality of this content is all over the map. Freedom of speech took on a whole new character. Pandora's box was thrown wide open. We also recognize that entities outside the United States also have a hand in our media system, but that's a topic for another day. There are other influences in this system. One that is significant enough to mention is the practice of gerrymandering. We won't dive into it now, but this practice removes choice from voters and encourages pandering to extremes because it virtually guarantees election outcomes. Everything is viewed in terms of winners and losers instead of a selection process that chooses the best for these elected positions. We should be looking for people who have a heart for civil service and who are less motivated by power, prestige, or wealth. But here's the interesting thing. It may be that a good deal of this division we hear so much about is in our heads. For example, we all know the familiar U.S. map of electoral college results. Because of our winner-take-all, first-past-the-post voting process, we end up with a mostly binary map of red and blue states. The majority of media coverage and election strategies support this divided depiction. Of course, there is always somebody in the middle. However, the electoral vote is supposed to be a proxy for the popular vote. If we look at the 2020 election popular vote, the map actually looks more like this. Our contention is that our distribution actually looks more like this, with the majority of people in the middle and the extremes of red and blue. We know that bad news sells, and therefore extremes are naturally more attractive or newsworthy. Is it any wonder that the myriad competing news sources focus on the most titillating news to grab our attention for the sale of their media product? We can see this when we talk to our friends, neighbors, and family. Sure, there are those who sound like the extremes of the headlines, but are they really just parroting what they've heard, or are these positions they really thought through? So here are some suggestions for things we can do to calm down, help improve the situation, and bring the country back together. First, let's rediscover and acknowledge our common goals. These would include things like a good job, safe streets, affordable home, education, stewardship, strong economy, good national reputation, peace, food, clothes, affordable quality health care, a moral and decent society, equal opportunities for all, fair laws and treatment under the law, etc. Unless you are someone who just likes a fight, would you not agree that most of us want these kinds of things? In these things, we are united. Our differences may not be in the what so much as the how these goals are accomplished. That's where the work of collaboration and compromise come in. Deal-making and compromise must be part of the work, so we arrive at a balanced representation of the people, which includes people from a diverse set of viewpoints. If we continue with a win-lose mindset, we do so at our peril. Second, we need to take some personal responsibility and decide that the greater good is greater than our individual desires. Healing will take all of us. This is not something a president can do alone. We each have a responsibility as citizens. Therefore, we suggest reaching out to at least two people, one to your ideological right and one to your left. If you find everyone on one side or the other of you, then you are probably an extreme. Have a conversation with those people. Remember, you're not trying to win the conversation. Rather, it's a conversation to understand what the other is about and to seek out those things you have in common. Cooperate, compromise, find solutions together. Guard against extremism. In a word, we need to love our neighbors. This is hard work. Third, we need to regain trust in our news and information sources so we can be intelligent, well-informed citizens and voters. Some of this we can influence as consumers by stopping our support of sketchy sources. Don't withdraw or cloister into affinity groups. Force yourself to hear all sides. Demand from our media channels balanced reporting with imagery and content put in true context. Demand citations and facts and sources that can be verified. The media likes to consider themselves outside the system, but they are clearly not. They influence the outcome as significant players in our information system. We ask that members of the media stand and take ownership of this and do justice to their journalistic ideals to remove bias despite personal opinions. Fourth, and finally, start going about the work of reaching these common goals. These are exciting times with so much potential and opportunity. There is reason for great optimism. There are new technologies that promise a wealth of new jobs to support the many livelihoods in this country. We have been hit hard, but we can come back better, stronger, and wiser because of it. Join us in this spirit. Over time, we will elect officials that support these ideals. There will no doubt be some necessary house cleaning. One of the best ways we can support this is to vote and either keep somebody doing a good job or remove somebody doing a poor one.